Deciding to embark on a 4-month journey to Australia in retrospect seemed a lot like deciding to bungee jump off that bridge in New Zealand. But when you don't really know what to expect and know there are only good things to come, sometimes you have to force yourself to take a first step. And so, the journey began. I said goodbye to my friends, family, my car, and my hometown of Austin, Texas, and set out for Australia. When I arrived in Melbourne, I quickly realized that a lot of the things I thought would be different actually ended up being pretty similar to the way they were in the US. As a result, I comfortably and quickly transitioned to life in the suburb of Hawthorne and Swinburne University. Apart from studying at Swinburne University, a big part of NUin involved service learning and volunteering. One of the larger events I volunteered for was Bupa Around the Bay, a charitable cycling event sponsored by the Smith family. At this event, I helped hand out lunches to cyclists and direct traffic on and off of ferries, shuttling cyclists to and from the bay. Throughout the day, I had quite a few casual conversations with the cyclists. I was astounded at how kind and appreciative they were to the volunteers and how committed they were to the work Bupa was doing. Another portion of my volunteering through NUin was working at Swinburne College, helping foreign students learn English. Although this was a challenge at first, I now see it as a very rewarding experience, as I got to learn about the countries that many of the students were from, and actually got to know a few of them quite well. I was lucky enough to spend a bit of my own time volunteering for the WikiLeaks party during the national election in Australia as well. As a result, I met some really interesting and passionate people, and was able to have at least a small role in the national election. All of my time wasn't just taken up studying at Swinburne and volunteering. I got to have some fun too. I got to go on excursions to places like the Healesville Animal Sanctuary, where I got to see a ton of Australian wildlife up close and personal, Phillip Island, where I got to see some breathtaking views of the coast and some really big waves, the Great Ocean Road, where I got to see dozens of wild koalas just hanging out in trees, and even more epic coastline. The final excursion was a weekend in Sydney. Sydney was definitely a bit more lively than Melbourne, but it was a nice change of pace. I got to see the Opera House and explore the harbour. One of my most memorable experiences while in Australia was the 10 days I spent driving a camper van around New Zealand with 2 of my friends. Cumulatively, we drove more than 2,000 kilometers, covering the entire east coast and west coast of the South Island. Learning to drive on the left side of the road was a bit daunting, but eventually I got the hang of it. Being able to drive through New Zealand gave me an interesting perspective as to how diverse the landscape really was. In certain remote areas, it rained so hard that helicopters had to be used to patch washouts in the road. In other parts of New Zealand, the only vegetation that could be found for miles was scrub brush and dry grass. And there were basically sheep everywhere. By far, my favorite destination in New Zealand was Milford Sound. Here, I got to see some of the rarest penguins and seals in the world while sea kayaking. Milford Sound is also one of the best places in the world for taking long exposure shots of the Milky Way, which I did. One thing I learned from my experience here in Australia was the importance of taking a first step in anything you wish to accomplish. The first step in deciding to go to Australia for my first semester of college is probably one of the best decisions I've ever made. Looking forward to Boston in January, I feel that I've learned a lot about myself, others, and in the meantime, even more about the Australian culture. I honestly can't imagine a better way I could have spent my first semester of college. The time I've spent studying abroad in Australia for the last 4 months hasn't just been an amazing experience, it's been a global experience.